Sit down, friend. I want to tell you about a man who got himself addicted to a wire. 40 years before anyone had a phone. I read a book this winter that's been ringing in my head ever since. It's called Dopamine Nation, written by a doctor named Anna Lembke. She runs the addiction clinic at Stanford, and right at the front of that book she writes a line so sharp it cuts. She says, the smartphone is the modern-day hypodermic needle, delivering digital dopamine 24/7 to a wired generation. And friend, she's right. But what hardly anyone remembers is that the first hypodermic was not the phone. It was the telegraph. And in 1882, on a lonely prairie station 3 days' ride from anywhere, there was a young operator named Asa Whitlock, who became the first man it ever caught. Asa was 24. Western Union sent him to a wood-frame station house on the Nebraska plain. A single room, a stove, a cot, a table, and the key. Just the key. The telegraph key. A little brass lever that clicked when messages came down the wire from St. Louis or Chicago or San Francisco. His job was simple. Take the message, write it down, tap the message back, sleep, eat, repeat.
For the first month, he loved it. He had a horse named Ruth. He had a small garden behind the station. Beans, 3 rows of corn, 1 stubborn tomato plant that refused to die. There was a young woman named Sarah Hines in the town 12 miles east who thought he had a kind face. And on Sundays, he'd ride in for church and supper. He played the fiddle on his porch in the evening. The plains turned gold at sunset, and he'd watch every minute of it. And the messages came. Train arriving Tuesday. Mother is well. The bank approved the loan. Each one a tiny window into a world bigger than the prairie. Each one a little spark in his chest. You all listening? Because here's where it turns. Dr. Lembke writes that pleasure and pain, they happen in the same place in the brain. They sit on opposite ends of a balance, like a seesaw. Every time you tip it toward pleasure, the brain quietly tips it back toward pain, to keep you level. That's just how the machine is built. And the more you press on the pleasure side, the harder the brain pushes back. She calls it the pleasure-pain balance. Asa didn't know any of that. He just knew that the click of the key, that little brass click, started to feel better than the sunset.
He started staying up later, hoping for one more message. Then he moved his cot next to the wall so he could hear the key in his sleep. Then he started leaving the door open at night so the click would carry farther. The book talks about Pavlov's dogs. You ring a bell at supper time, and pretty soon the dogs drool when they hear the bell, even with no food in sight. Dr. Lembke writes that the brain releases a little dopamine before the reward, just from the cue, the bell, the buzzer, the notification, the click. Asa's brain started spiking on the click itself. Sometimes the click was a real message. Sometimes it was just the wire shifting in the cold. Didn't matter. His body would jolt up either way. Then came the tolerance. Dr. Lembke is honest about this. She lived it herself. She got hooked on romance novels in her 40s, vampire books. She read the saga 4 times through, she says. And by the 4th time, the books didn't work anymore. The same story that had lit her up the first time felt flat. So she had to read more, faster, cheaper, trashier, just to feel anything.
Asa started initiating.
tapping out his own messages. Status check, Omaha. Status check, St. Joseph. Reporting clear weather. Please respond. He'd send them at 3 in the morning, just to wait for the reply. The reply was the fix. Ruth, the horse, went unbrushed. The garden went to weeds. The stubborn tomato plant gave up and died. Asa stopped riding into town on Sundays. Sarah Hines wrote him 3 letters and then stopped writing. And here's the worst of it. The sunsets. The gold ones. The ones he used to watch every night. They stopped working. He'd stand on the porch and look at them and feel nothing. The fiddle sat in the corner with a broken string. He could not understand why the prairie had gone gray. Dr. Lembke has a name for this. The pursuit of pleasure for its own sake, she writes, leads to anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure of any kind. Hedonism makes you numb. The seesaw has been pressed so hard toward pleasure that the brain has welded it shut on the pain side. Now, nothing feels good. Not even the things that used to. That's where Asa was, the morning the storm came. A blizzard out of the northwest cracked a pole 20 miles down the line. The wire went dead. Not just slow, dead. No clicks, no messages, nothing. For the first 3 days, Asa nearly lost his mind. He paced. He didn't eat. He held the key in his hand and tapped it just to hear something. He felt anxious, irritable, sleepless. Those are Dr. Lembke's words for what every person in withdrawal feels. He felt sick. Day 5, he saddled Ruth, just to do something with his hands. Day 7, he weeded what was left of the garden. Day 10, he picked up the fiddle and put a new string on it. Day 14, he watched the sunset all the way through, and he wept. Not because it was sad, because it was gold again. Dr. Lembke writes, and this is the line I keep folded in my pocket. She writes that if we just wait long enough, the brain readapts. The balance levels back out. We become, once more, able to take pleasure in everyday, simple rewards. Going for a walk, watching the sunrise, enjoying a meal with friends. A walk, a sunrise, a meal with friends. That is what Asa got back on day 14 of a broken wire. But the linemen were coming. He could see them 3 miles out, a black smudge on the road. The wire would be fixed by sundown. And Asa knew himself well enough now to know if he sat at that key the way he had before, he'd be back in the gray inside a week. So he did something the book calls self-binding. Dr. Lembke writes about putting space, time, and meaning between yourself and your drug. The drug doesn't go away. You just put a wall between you and it. Asa took an iron lockbox down off the shelf. He wrote a note on the lid. Open at sunrise, close at sundown. He gave the only key to Sarah Hines. Now think about that for a second. The man who'd let her stop writing handed her the key to his life. He rode 12 miles to her door, and he stood there with his hat in his hands, and he said, Miss Hines, I have been a fool. I need a wall between me and the wire. Will you keep this key? And she did. For 30 years, Asa Whitlock ran that telegraph. He took the messages, he sent the messages, and every night at sundown, he locked the key in the box. And every morning at sunrise, he rode 12 miles to fetch it back. And in between, he watched the gold come into the prairie. He brushed the horse. He played the fiddle. He married Sarah Hines on a Sunday in May.
and they lived in a small white house with one stubborn tomato plant by the kitchen window. He used the wire. The wire never used him again. Now look, I am not telling you to throw your phone in a lockbox and ride 12 miles. But friend, let me ask you something. When was the last time you watched a sunset all the way through? Not the first 30 seconds for the photograph, the whole thing, until the last gold went out of the sky. If you had to think about that, your seesaw might be tipped. And the thing in your pocket, the one buzzing right now while you watch this? Dr. Lembke's modern-day hypodermic needle. It's tipping it harder every hour you give it. Pick up Dopamine Nation by Anna Lembke. Read it slow. It won't make you throw the phone away. It'll just show you the seesaw, and the gremlins on the pain side, and the man at the wire. And after that, you'll never look at a notification the same way. If this story landed somewhere soft, hit that subscribe button down below. I've got more stories on the shelf, more books on the table, and a quiet hour every Sunday for whoever needs one. Come sit a while. And friend, go watch a sunset. The whole thing. Good night.